I never thought I'd take a job like this. Driving a cab wasn't exactly a dream, but after months of struggling to find stable work in Little Rock, the glowing now hiring sign outside Moonlight Cabs pulled me in like a magnet. The name sounded strange, almost theatrical, but I was desperate. My rent was overdue, and my car had just been repossessed. I needed money, and I needed it fast. The office was tucked between an abandoned gas station and a boarded-up pawn shop. The cab depot looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 70s. Yellow paint peeled from the siding, and a dusty neon crescent moon flickered in the window. A single cab sat out front, idling in the humid Arkansas dusk. Inside, the place smelled like stale coffee and tire rubber. The walls were lined with photographs of drivers from past decades, all of them wearing the same dark uniform and expressionless face. Behind the desk sat a pale, wiry man with silver-rimmed glasses and thin lips that never quite formed a smile. He introduced himself as Mr. Whitmore. "You here for the night shift?" he asked, eyeing me without blinking. I nodded. "Yes, sir. Saw the sign out front. Ever driven professionally before?" "A little Uber back in Texas, but nothing like this." He stared for a moment, then reached under the desk and pulled out a clipboard with a form already filled out. Just the signature line was blank. "No background checks, no drug tests. We pay nightly, cash. But if you want the job, there are rules you must follow." I hesitated. Rules? For a cab driver? Mr. Whitmore pushed the clipboard toward me, along with a crumpled sheet of paper. The heading was simple: Moonlight Cabs, Night Shift Protocol. I unfolded it and read the first few lines. 1. You may only operate between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. 2. Do not speak to the dispatch radio unless spoken to first. 3. Never pick up a fare waving you down from the roadside. 4. Do not stop driving between 2:33 and 2:47 a.m., no matter what. 5. If a passenger leaves something behind, do not return it. Bring it directly to the lost and found box in the back office. 6. If a second voice speaks from the back seat and no one else is there, ignore it. Do not react. 7. Under no circumstances should you take Route 47 between miles 12 and 16. "What is this?" I asked, feeling a chill creep up my spine. Mr. Whitmore's lips curled into the faintest shadow of a grin. "We've been around a long time, son. We operate where others won't. You follow the rules. You'll make more money than any other cab driver in this city. Break them." He let the sentence hang in the stale air. I should have walked out right then, but the desperation in my gut overpowered the dread settling in my chest. I signed the form. By 9 p.m., I was in the driver's seat of cab number 27, a beat-up Crown Victoria with cracked leather seats and a dashboard held together with duct tape. A laminated copy of the rules was taped to the glove box. Mr. Whitmore handed me a small black earpiece for the radio and patted the roof of the car. "You get through tonight, we'll talk about long term. Just remember the rules." I pulled out of the lot and merged onto a quiet side street. The night was hot and sticky. The city looked darker than usual, like the streetlights were afraid to shine too brightly. By 9:17 p.m., my radio crackled. "Cab 27, corner of Magnolia and 3rd, 1 passenger." I tapped the earpiece twice, just like the instruction sheet said, to acknowledge. No speaking. I pulled up to the corner. A woman in a red dress stood under the flickering light. She looked tired, her eyes heavy with sleeplessness. She got in the back without a word. "Marion Drive," she said softly. The ride was uneventful. She didn't speak again, and I didn't ask questions. I dropped her off in front of a run-down apartment complex and waited to see if she'd forgotten anything. She didn't. The seat was empty, no strange voices, nothing unusual. I started to relax. My second fare came just after 10:30 p.m. A man in a black suit and tie got in, though he looked like he'd been to a funeral. His face was pale and gaunt, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Lakeview Cemetery," he said. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. That wasn't a normal destination for a cab ride, but I remembered the rule: don't question the passengers, just drive. The roads were quiet, and as we passed under a bridge near the outskirts of town, my headlights caught something on the shoulder. A man, shirtless, waving his arms wildly. My first instinct was to pull over, but I slammed on the brakes before I could change lanes. Rule number 3, never pick up a fare waving from the roadside. I sped up, trying not to look back in the mirror, But curiosity got the better of me. I glanced up. There was no one there, no trace, not even a silhouette in the rearview mirror. I dropped the suited man at the cemetery gate. He stepped out, didn't pay, didn't even look back. He just walked through the iron gates, which opened on their own as he approached. I stared in stunned silence, unable to move until the radio clicked again. Cab 27, Main Street in Elkins, priority pickup. My hands trembled slightly as I shifted into drive and made my way back into the heart of the city. Main and Elkins was near a closed strip mall. I pulled up, and the passenger was already standing there. He was tall, dressed in what looked like a 1950s military uniform. His hat shadowed most of his face, but I could see a faint, crooked smile beneath it. He slid into the back seat. "You're the new guy," he said with a slight rasp. I didn't answer. I wasn't supposed to unless the radio spoke to me. He leaned forward slightly. I could smell old tobacco and something else. Salt? His eyes gleamed in the rear view. "Don't worry, rookie," he whispered. "They haven't told you all the rules yet." I froze. Every part of me wanted to turn around and ask what he meant, but I remembered Rule 6. He gave an address, and I drove. It was a trailer park on the far east side. As we pulled up, he leaned closer again. "If someone offers you a ride during your shift, say no, no matter what they promise." Before I could even glance at him in the mirror, he opened the door and disappeared into the dark. The seat was completely dry. No footprints. No trace. I reached down to wipe my sweaty hands on my pants, only to notice something on the floorboard. A military dog tag. The name was too scratched to read clearly, but the date of death was etched in, October 14th, 1952. I sat there staring at it for a long time before tossing it into the glove box and slamming it shut. The laminated rules slipped from the edge and fluttered into my lap. A new line had been added to the bottom in red ink. 8. If a passenger leaves you a warning, heed it. You only get one. I didn't remember that being there earlier. I was sure it hadn't been. The radio crackled again. "Cab 27, 2:32 a.m., checkpoint approaching. Keep driving." I checked the clock. 2:31. Then the world around me began to change. The lights along the road began to flicker, one by one, then all at once. My engine started to sputter even though the fuel tank was full. Shadows moved at the edges of my vision. And then from the back seat, I heard it. A second voice, not one I recognized. It whispered just two words, "Turn back." But I kept driving because it was 2:33 a.m. and the rules were clear. The clock hit 2:47 a.m. The moment it did, everything snapped back to normal. The flickering streetlights lit up again. The car engine purred like nothing had happened. The shadows that danced in the corners of my eyes were gone. Even the air felt lighter, like whatever had been sitting on my chest for those 15 minutes had lifted. I pulled over to a gas station that had long since closed. I needed a minute. My hands were still shaking from what I'd heard in the back seat. That voice, cold, sharp, not human, it had hissed, "Turn back," like it knew I was breaking a rule, like it wanted me to break it. But I didn't. I remembered the rules. You don't stop between 2:33 and 2:47 a.m., no matter what. I leaned back in the driver's seat and looked at the glove box. That damned list was still there, slightly crumpled, stained now with the sweat from my fingers. I reached over and opened it, just to see if the new rule, number 8, was still written there. It was. If a passenger leaves you a warning, heed it. You only get one. And right below it, in even smaller red ink, something new had appeared. Do not speak to what rides at 3:15. I didn't know what to make of it. These rules were changing in real time, like someone or something was watching me, updating them as I went. At 3:02, my radio crackled again. Cab 27, last pickup of the night, 87 Bellamy Road, apartment B12. I didn't want to go. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to turn around and drive straight home, but I knew better now. Ignoring a dispatch could very well be a rule I hadn't broken yet. I started the car again and headed out to Bellamy Road. It was a narrow, broken street on the edge of a forest. The trees leaned in unnaturally close, like they were eavesdropping. Fog began to roll in from nowhere, heavy and low, making it hard to see past a few feet. I drove slowly, headlights barely cutting through the mist, until I saw a flickering porch light ahead. B12 was the bottom unit of an old, moldy-looking duplex. The front door creaked open before I could even honk. A figure stepped out, tall and thin, wearing a gray raincoat despite the dry night. I couldn't make out the face beneath the wide-brimmed hat. He or she moved slowly, almost too slowly, toward the cab. The passenger opened the back door and sat down without a word. I waited. Nothing. No destination, no greeting, just the sound of shallow breathing. "Where to?" I asked, immediately realizing my mistake. The back of my neck went ice cold. The clock on the dash blinked to 3:15. Silence. Then a whisper from the back seat. "You spoke." The lights inside the car flickered. The mirrors fogged. The engine stuttered. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to see what was sitting behind me. The voice again, closer this time, right behind my ear. "You're not supposed to talk to me." I stayed quiet, jaw locked, eyes forward. Then the passenger chuckled, a low, hollow sound that didn't match any human I'd ever heard. Too late now. The ride began. Not because I started driving, but because the cab moved on its own. The steering wheel turned without my hands. The gas pedal pushed down by itself. We glided down Bellamy Road as if something had taken over. The passenger never gave directions, and yet the car moved like it knew exactly where to go. The fog got thicker. Trees warped, their trunks twisting in impossible shapes. Street signs became unreadable. Houses disappeared. The road narrowed until it was nothing but dirt under the tires. And then everything stopped. The engine died. The headlights shut off. We were in total darkness. The figure in the back leaned forward. I could hear the leather of the seat stretch. "You have broken a rule," it whispered, "and the fare must be paid." A hand reached forward, long gray with too many joints, and rested on my shoulder. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even think. Then, out of nowhere, the radio buzzed. "Cab 27, return to base." The hand withdrew. The engine roared back to life. The lights came on. The fog cleared instantly, like it had never been there. I turned around to look at the back seat. It was empty. No sign of the figure. No wet footprints, no strange shadows. Just one thing. A worn leather wallet. I picked it up carefully and opened it. Inside was a photograph. A man in the same gray raincoat and hat, standing next to an old cab, identical to the one I was driving. The photo was dated July 26, 1973. The back of the photo had a note scribbled in fading ink. "Rule 9, never ask where the last driver went." When I got back to the depot, it was almost 4 a.m. Mr. Whitmore was waiting outside smoking a cigarette. He didn't look surprised to see me, but there was something new in his eyes, a hint of respect or pity. "Rough night?" he asked. I handed him the wallet without a word. He took it, opened it, and sighed. "Jenkins," he muttered. "Took his shift one night too many." "Who was he?" I asked. Whitmore stared at the wallet for a long moment before answering. "Let's just say you're not the first rookie to talk to the 315 fare." He turned and walked back inside. I followed slowly, shaken and silent. The rules were no joke. They weren't just guidelines. They were lifelines. That night, I learned that some fares aren't passengers. They're collectors. And when you break the wrong rule, you become their next ride. As I clocked out, I noticed something new on the rule sheet tacked to the wall. Rule 10, don't quit after your second night. They don't like that. And below that, scratched in faint red ink, just barely visible, they always come back for the unfinished ride. To be continued. Part 3 will continue with strange fares, a missing driver's journal, and the terrifying truth behind Moonlight Cabs. After the second night, sleep became a stranger. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the whisper again. "You spoke." Sometimes I'd wake up gasping for air, convinced that crooked hand was still resting on my shoulder. By the time I showed up at Moonlight Cabs for night 3, I was running on caffeine, fear, and adrenaline. The office looked even older in the moonlight, like it was rotting in place. Whitmore was outside again, feeding breadcrumbs to a one-eyed crow that sat on the power line like it owned the building. "You made it back," he said without turning around. I didn't respond. I just clocked in. Inside, something was different. A chair was missing. One of the driver portraits from the wall, cab number 19, had been taken down. A rectangle of dustless wallpaper marked the empty space. Whitmore saw me staring. "Don't worry about that," he said. But I did worry. Because last night, the rules added a warning about quitting after the second night. And if someone quit or tried to, what happened? I slipped into cab number 27, the same rusty Crown Vic, and found something resting on the passenger seat, a leather-bound notebook. The front was labeled in faded marker, driver log, Cabmer 19, J.R. Merrick. My stomach tightened. That was the name Whitmore mumbled last night, Jenkins Merrick. I knew I shouldn't touch it, but I couldn't stop myself. I opened to the first page. Day 1, Whitmore says follow the rules. I thought it was a joke. It's not. Flipping forward, the entries became darker. Day 5, the man in black followed me home, stayed outside my window until sunrise. Day 9, passenger turned into my brother halfway through the ride, but my brother died in '94. Then this, written in frantic, smeared ink. Day 12, Rule 11 exists. They won't write it down. There was no day 13. I sat in silence for several minutes, notebook in my lap, heart racing. Rule 11? What was it? And why wouldn't they write it down? Before I could flip back, the radio buzzed. Cab 27, pick up at Prescott Tunnel, emergency fare. I froze. Prescott Tunnel was blocked off last year. There had been a collapse. 2 people were killed. No one drove that way anymore. It wasn't even on the maps. Still, I started the engine, because now I knew. Ignoring a pickup wasn't just against the rules, it invited something worse. The route to the tunnel passed through the industrial district, where warehouses hunched like sleeping giants. As I approached, a dense fog rolled in. The entrance to the tunnel loomed like a gaping mouth. There was a single figure waiting, a little girl in a white dress holding a stuffed rabbit. I didn't want to stop. Every fiber of me screamed to drive away, but my hands turned the wheel on their own. She got in silently, her small feet not even reaching the floor. She didn't give an address. She just held the rabbit close and whispered, "Take me home." I nodded and started to drive, though I had no idea where home was. The ride was silent, but as I passed the 5-minute mark, the cab's lights began to dim. The temperature dropped. Frost crept across the inside of the windshield. Then she began to speak, not to me, but to the rabbit. "He doesn't know, Mr. Hops. He doesn't know about Rule 11. My blood turned to ice. The voice was wrong. It wasn't a child's. It was layered, deep and high, old and young, speaking through her mouth like a puppet. The girl's head turned slightly and her eyes locked onto mine in the rearview mirror. They never tell the drivers until it's too late. I didn't speak. I kept driving. "He thinks the journal will help him," she whispered to the rabbit. "But it won't. The last driver read too much, and now he's not in the photos anymore." I glanced at the mirror again. The girl was gone. In her place sat a burnt mannequin. Melted plastic face, one eye missing, the other a cracked glass bead. It was holding the rabbit in its lap. The cab screeched to a halt on its own. When I turned around, the back seat was empty. Only the stuffed rabbit remained. I grabbed it carefully and placed it in the glove box. The moment I closed it, the radio buzzed again. Cab 27, lost and found protocol required. Return to depot. I sped back. I didn't want to be out any longer than necessary. When I pulled into the lot, Whitmore was waiting as usual. "Lost something?" he asked. I handed him the rabbit. He took it with a pair of tongs and placed it in a rusted metal box behind the front desk labeled Lost and Found. It hissed when the lid shut. Then he turned to me. "You've read Merrick's journal." It wasn't a question. I nodded. Whitmore sighed, tired. "You're not the first, but you need to understand, some things in there were written after Merrick was gone." I blinked. "How is that possible?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed to the wall where the missing photo used to be. A new picture had been hung up, Cabmer 27. Me, but my eyes were missing, scratched out violently. Beneath the photo, a brass plaque had been added. "Active duty, bound by Rule 11. My chest tightened. "What is Rule 11? I asked. Whitmore looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "It's not written because it's different for everyone. But once it's yours, it binds you, forever." I stepped back. "What's mine?" He didn't answer. He simply pointed behind me. I turned. The cab door to number 27 had swung open, and inside, where the passenger seat used to be, sat the burnt mannequin, still holding the rabbit. The glove box was wide open, and Merrick's journal was gone. To be continued. Part 4 will reveal Rule 11 in full, explore the missing drivers, and confront the deadly truth behind Moonlight Cabs. I didn't sleep after my 3rd night. I tried. God knows I tried, but every time my eyes shut, I saw that mannequin sitting in the cab, holding the rabbit like it was guarding something, or waiting for me. By the time 9 p.m. rolled around, I felt like a man marching into war. But this wasn't a battlefield. It was a ghost story I couldn't wake up from. The cab, the rules, the passengers, and now Rule 11, the one they never wrote down, the one that binds you. When I stepped into the depot that night, the first thing I noticed was the silence. The other drivers' portraits, once staring at me with blank expressions, were now covered with sheets of paper. Each one had a number written across it in red ink. 11. Whitmore wasn't in his usual chair behind the desk. The lights were dimmer than usual. The front door clicked shut behind me on its own. Then I saw it, something new. On the table next to the dispatcher's mic, a sealed envelope. My name, handwritten in neat block letters across the front. I opened it with trembling fingers. Driver number 27, Rule 11 has chosen you. Tonight, you will not receive dispatch calls. No radio, no passengers. You must follow the route of cab number 19. Exactly, from memory, from instinct, from the whispers. Do not return until the ride is complete, and do not, under any circumstances, take your hands off the wheel. Beneath the letter was a key, not to cab number 27, but to cab number 19. The missing driver's car. It was parked in the back lot behind the dumpsters. I'd never noticed it before. Dusty, dented, covered in ivy like it had been sitting for years. But when I slid the key into the ignition, it started on the first try. The lights flickered to life and the radio began playing softly, a child's voice, singing a lullaby. I didn't recognize the tune, but it chilled me to the core. I drove, no destination, no GPS, no radio contact, only the journal entries I remembered from Merrick's notebook to guide me. Turn left at the rusted mailbox, right where the billboard is blank, the road that doesn't show up in daylight. I followed the path exactly as described. Soon, the city disappeared behind me, swallowed by pine trees and dirt roads. Fog crept in, my headlights dimmed. A sound began to hum through the radio, low and rhythmic, like something breathing from beneath the seat. Then at exactly 12:04 a.m., the road disappeared entirely. It was like the asphalt unraveled. 1 second I was driving on gravel, the next, nothing. Blackness, not night, not fog, just emptiness. The car still moved forward, engine humming, but there were no trees, no stars, no road, only that lullaby playing on a loop. Then I saw them. Figures lining both sides of the invisible road. They stood in perfect stillness. No eyes, no mouths, just silhouettes, some tall, some hunched, some crawling. They didn't move, they didn't blink, but I felt them watching. I gripped the wheel tighter, remembering the warning. Do not take your hands off the wheel. Something inside me screamed to turn back, to stop, to do anything but continue. But I knew I couldn't. This was Rule 11, my ride, my test. Then the first voice came, from the back seat. You shouldn't have opened the journal. A woman's voice, soft, cold. Then another, a man, older. You brought something back that was supposed to stay lost. Then another, and another. Voices layered over voices. Passengers I hadn't picked up. Or maybe passengers Merrick had. They whispered things I couldn't understand. Places, names, rules that didn't exist on paper. And then finally, do you know what Rule 11 is? I didn't answer, because deep down, I was starting to understand. Rule 11 wasn't just a warning. It was a curse. I kept driving. My knuckles had gone white on the steering wheel. Then at 1:09 a.m., the cab stopped. Not because I pressed the brakes, it simply froze. The engine died. The lights shut off. I was floating in the dark. Something pressed against the windshield from outside. I couldn't see what it was, but I heard it, knocking. 3 soft taps, then silence. Then, return what you took. I remembered the rabbit, still in the lost and found box back at the depot. They wanted it back. Or maybe not it. Maybe what came with it. I was suddenly thrown forward, blinded by a flash of light. And when my eyes adjusted, I was parked back in front of the depot. But it was different. No lights, no sound, no Whitmore. I stepped out, legs trembling, and walked inside. The walls were covered in photos again, but not just of drivers, of passengers, hundreds, maybe thousands, some blurry, some with their eyes scratched out, some with no faces at all. I turned around. Cab number 19 was gone, replaced by cab number 27. My car, its door was open. Inside, the mannequin sat once more, but it had changed. Its head now turned toward the driver's seat. Its hand, stretched out, held the rabbit. Its mouth was open. Inside, there was something glinting, a key, not to a cab, to a room, a locked door at the back of the depot I had never seen opened. It was marked Records. I took the key, and just as I slid it into the lock, the radio buzzed loud and sharp. Cab 27, do not open that door. Too late. I turned the handle. Inside, stacked floor to ceiling, were journals, hundreds of them, each labeled with a cab number, each filled with stories like mine. And there, on the first shelf, was a leather-bound book with no number, just two words, Rule 11. I didn't want to touch it. That unmarked leather journal, Rule 11, sat on the top shelf, pulsing with something I couldn't name. Not literally, but it felt alive. Like it knew I was the one who had opened the door. The one stupid enough to follow Merrick's route. The one who broke the silence at 3:15. But some part of me, maybe the same part that signed the application on the first night, reached for it anyway. The moment my fingers brushed the cover, the lights inside the records room went out. Not flickered. Went out. Pitch black. Then came the whisper, almost gleeful. You've claimed it. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot. Then the floor shifted. Not like a quake, but like the entire room began to descend. Slow, groaning metal scraped beneath my feet. A hidden elevator. The walls of the records room slid upward around me, revealing something deeper. Something older. A cavern. No, not just a cavern, a station. There were train tracks, rusted and uneven, leading into the darkness, and beside them sat an old black taxi. Its surface reflected no light. Its windows were pure shadow. The number on its license plate simply read 000. I should have screamed. Instead, I opened the journal. The pages were brittle and yellowed, and yet the ink was fresh, as if written only moments ago. Rule 11. There is a fare who cannot reach their destination, a passenger forever in transit. If you accept Rule 11, you must finish the ride that every other driver failed to complete. The route has no map. The rules no longer apply. Only one can finish it. All others disappear. Cabin 19 failed. Cabin 41 failed. Cabin 03 failed. Now Cab 27 rides. I dropped the journal. The taxi door creaked open. Smoke rolled out, and from within, a figure stepped. They were tall, dressed in black like a funeral director. Their eyes glowed white, not with light, but with hunger. Their mouth was sewn shut with wire, but I still heard their voice. I've been waiting for a driver who won't stop. I backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The tracks behind me vanished. The records room had vanished. Only the cab and I remained. Then the figure pointed at me. You accepted the journal. The wheel is yours now. The black cab's engine rumbled to life, and the rear door opened. Inside was nothing, and yet I knew. The fare was already inside. I tried to fight it. I tried to refuse, but the seat pulled me forward, and the cab swallowed me whole. The moment I sat in the driver's seat, I wasn't me anymore. I saw through other eyes, lived other lives, fleeting flashes of drivers past. Merrick, Calhoun, drivers I'd never met, all staring out the same windshield at a road that went on forever. There were no signs, no exits, just road and fog. And behind me, silence, except when it spoke. It never used the same voice twice. A child, a mother, a soldier, a monster. All of them said the same thing. Keep driving. I did. For minutes, hours, days. There was no time here, just the ride and the toll. I lost count of how many passengers I picked up. They never stayed long. Some faded mid-ride. Others left things behind. Bones, feathers, teeth, songs written in blood. Each time I stopped, the fare in the back remained silent, watching, waiting. Then I began to forget my name, my apartment, why I even took the job. All I knew was the road and Rule 11. At some point, maybe a year into the endless ride, maybe a moment, I saw it. A fork in the road. One path continued into the fog, deeper, darker. The other led to a single building, the depot. Moonlight cabs. I slammed the brakes. The taxi screeched to a halt. The voice in the back seat hissed, "You cannot stop." But I did. I turned the wheel, forced the car to the depot. Gravel crunched beneath the tires like bones. As I stepped out, the entire building breathed, exhaling warm, sour air. Inside, it looked the same as before. Same walls, same portraits. But every face was mine. Hundreds of me, some smiling, some bleeding, some with their eyes stitched shut. I turned to leave, but Mr. Whitmore was standing in the doorway. Except now, his eyes glowed just like the fare's. "Thought you could finish the ride?" he asked. "No one does." "I came back," I said. My voice cracked. He smiled, wide and wrong. "Then you'll train the next." He handed me a clipboard. Blank, except for the line at the top, "Now hiring night shift." I looked down at my reflection in the depot's glass window. It wasn't me, not anymore. My driver number was gone. Now I was the cab, or the fare, or the rule. I don't even know anymore. All I know is the application still waits by the door, and Moonlight Cabs is still hiring. You just have to follow the rules, all 11. If you can, the end.